Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something I think a lot of you are going to find super exciting, which is basically like your brain's potential for, super learning.
Oh, yeah.
You guys sent in some seriously fascinating research on all these accelerated learning techniques.
hmm
And let me tell you, my mind is like already buzzing just kind of getting into this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, have you ever wished you could like just download knowledge straight into your brain? Like Matrix style?
totally. Like, who hasn't, right?
Well, some of these sources suggest that that might not be as crazy as it sounds.
Yeah, and what I find so captivating about all this is how much it kind of challenges those old assumptions we have about, like, what our brains are capable of.
Right.
Like, remember that whole thing about how we only use 10% of our brains?
Oh, yeah, total myth.
Complete nonsense, right?
Like we're buying a Ferrari and then only driving it in first gear.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got this incredible machine up here. And it's like you've given us the blueprints to unlock its full power.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the most eye-opening ideas I've come across in all this um, is that intelligence isn't fixed.
Right.
It's not like you're born with a certain IQ and that's it, game over.
It's not set in stone.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it's way more dynamic than that.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
Well, your sources really emphasize this idea that intelligence is more like a muscle. The
Okay.
more you challenge it, the stronger it gets.
Okay, so are you picturing tiny dumbbells for my neurons right now?
Basically, they actually compare it to physical training. Like, you wouldn't expect to just walk into a gym and bench press, 300 pounds without putting in any work, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with your brain. You have to exercise it, challenge it.
Right, right. So it's more about like building those neural pathways, making those connections stronger over time.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But I mean, some people learn faster than others, right?
Yeah.
So is that nature or nurture? Is it like the structure of their brain?
Well, there's definitely, a genetic component. Nobody is denying that. But there's also a ton of research that shows that our environment, our experiences, they all play a huge role in shaping our cognitive abilities.
Okay, so like even if you weren't like quote unquote gifted as a kid,
Right.
you can still become like a learning machine if you put in the effort.
Absolutely. It's never too late to train your brain.
That is so encouraging to hear. Speaking of encouraging, you know what really blew my mind in all of this research was this one study that found that, get this, a student's IQ jumped 25 points in a single year. A year.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
That's insane. Like, how is that even possible? Was it like some crazy genetic thing?
Nope. It was all about their mindset.
What do you mean?
They simply believed they could become smarter, and their brains rose to the challenge.
So it's like if you believe you can do something, your brain is more likely to make it happen.
Exactly. It's a powerful example of how our expectations can actually shape our reality, even at the neurological level.
Okay, now that is fascinating. So our thoughts really do have that much power.
It seems so, yeah.
Wow. And this actually connects directly to like the whole idea of lifelong learning,
Yes, exactly.
which, we talk about all the time on the show.
Right.
It's not just about like absorbing information. It's about like, continually pushing yourself, stretching and expanding your brain's capacity to learn.
Yeah, it's like the more you engage in that process, the better you become at it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it creates this amazing positive feedback loop.
Oh, I like that. A brain game. And get this, some of the research even suggests that it might actually help us live longer.
Yeah, I've seen those studies. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Talk about motivation to stay curious. Like, sign me up. But, okay, let's get into some more, like, nitty-gritty stuff
Sure.
about how our brains actually learn. Because I was, like, blown away by, like, the whole left brain, right brain thing. It's like
Well,
having two totally different, like, personalities up there.
two sides of the same coin, but yeah.
Right, exactly. So for people who might not be, like,
Right.
totally up on their brain anatomy, can you, like, break that down for us?
Yeah, for sure. So we often think of the brain as this, like, single entity, right?
Right. Yeah.
But in reality, those two hemispheres, they've got their own, like, unique strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
The left brain, that's your analytical, logical thinker,
Okay.
loves language, loves linear processing, all that good stuff.
Gotcha.
While the right brain, now this is where things get a little more, out there.
Okay.
It's all about intuition, creativity, seeing the big picture, that kind of thing.
So it's like the left brain is, like, writing a to-do list, and the right brain is, like, painting a mural.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
I'm trying. So how do we, like, get those two seemingly opposite forces to work together, especially, when we're talking about like accelerated learning.
Well, that's where things get really interesting because accelerated learning techniques like those pioneered by the Bulgarian researcher Georgy Lozanov.
Ooh, Lozanov.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, his work is like the stuff of legend in this world.
He was a pioneer for sure.
We're talking about students learning languages at like superhuman speeds,
It's pretty wild.
like enough to hold a conversation in a single day kind of speed.
Yeah, you're not exaggerating.
That just sounds impossible.
I know, it sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
But Lesonov's experiments using a technique that he called suggestopedia.
Suggestopedia.
Yeah, suggestopedia.
Okay, I'm gonna need you to like unpack that one for me because that just sounds like made up.
It does, doesn't it? But it's
Okay.
legit. Basically, it demonstrated that it's absolutely achievable.
Wait, learning a language in a day is achievable.
Under the right conditions, yes.
Okay, what kind of conditions are we talking about here?
Mhm.
Like, do I need to like hook myself up to one of those like brain zapping machines or something?
Nothing quite so dramatic. Imagine this. You're in a relaxed, comfortable environment.
Okay.
Maybe there's some soft music playing.
Okay.
The information you need to learn is presented in a playful, engaging way, often incorporating things like drama or storytelling.
So it's not just like sitting there with flashcards drilling yourself.
No, no, no. It's about making it fun, immersive even.
Okay.
You're not even like consciously trying to cram this information into your brain.
Mhm.
Instead, you're almost like allowing it to flow in naturally.
Okay, so it's about like creating the ideal mental and emotional state for learning to take place.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
like almost like bypassing those internal blocks and resistances that we often like put up without even realizing it.
You got it.
That's like trippy. So is there like a scientific explanation for how this actually works?
There is. A crucial aspect of suggestopedia, and really a lot of accelerated learning techniques, is tapping into a specific brainwave state known as alpha theta.
Alpha theta. Now that sounds familiar.
You naturally experience it as you drift off to sleep.
Right. That like twilight zone between being awake and asleep.
Exactly.
Interesting. So you're saying that that's like a prime state for learning.
It seems counterintuitive, but yes.
I can already feel my brain like getting sleepy just thinking about it.
It's not about falling asleep. It's about accessing that state where your mind is relaxed but receptive.
Okay, so how do we do that? Do we just like all need to become expert nappers or something?
That's one way to do it, but we'll get into some more practical techniques a little later in the deep dive.
Okay, good to know because I'm not sure I'm ready to like give up my day job to become a professional sleeper just yet. But
Yeah.
before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
there's something else that I wanted to circle back to that I found super interesting in the research.
Okay. What is it?
The power of music.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I think about studying, music isn't exactly the first thing that comes to mind.
Right.
Like I'm more of a like, silence, maybe some coffee kind of learner.
Yeah, I hear you, but you might be surprised. What if I told you that certain types of music can actually enhance your learning, particularly Baroque music?
Wait, are you serious? Baroque music.
You heard me right.
Like Bach and like those guys.
The one and only.
I'm picturing like powdered wigs and harpsichords.
It's a whole vibe.
Are you telling me that's the key to unlocking my inner Einstein?
It might just be. Lozanov actually found that Baroque music with its specific rhythms and harmonies can synchronize brainwaves and create an optimal state for both learning and focus.
So it's not just about drowning out distractions. It's like it's actively enhancing the learning process with the right kind of sound.
Precisely.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
It's pretty cool, right?
That is way cooler than I ever imagined.
It's like giving your brain a gentle massage while it soaks up new information.
I'm definitely adding some back to my study playlist after this.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I hope so. But okay, so we've talked about brainwaves, we've talked about Baroque music. It's like we're building a whole toolkit here for like hacking our brains to becoming these like learning machines.
Right. The possibilities are pretty exciting.
But let's be real for a second because most of us, I mean, we're not trying to learn like a new language in a single day.
Right.
We've got like jobs and families and, Netflix to catch up on.
Of course, of course.
So like, how do we actually apply all of these principles to like, our everyday learning goals?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the good news is that a lot of these principles, they're incredibly practical.
Sure.
One of the simplest yet most powerful takeaways from everything we've been looking at is, honestly, the importance of defining your why.
Okay, I've heard that before, but I feel like people say that and don't really explain it.
It's true, it gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, so like, what do you really mean by like define your why?
It's about getting really clear on your motivation for learning something.
But like, don't just dive into a new subject blindly.
Exact.
Take some time to like actually think about it. Like, why does this matter to me?
Yes. What do you hope to achieve with this knowledge? How will it enrich your life?
Because when you have a strong why, it's like fuel for your brain.
That's right. 100%.
It keeps you engaged, keeps you motivated, and it helps you retain information better.
You're much more likely to stick with it when you've got that deeper motivation.
It's like the difference between like watching a documentary because it just happened to be on TV.
Right.
Versus like seeking it out because it's about like, marine biology, which is your like lifelong passion.
Exactly. You're going to be way more engaged in that second scenario.
Right. And you're going to retain way more information because you're actually interested.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to another really key takeaway. Shorter bursts, better results.
Okay, talk to me about that. I feel like that's like the classic mistake that so many people make those marathon study sessions.
Oh, tell me about it.
Oh, we've all been there, glued to our desks for hours on end, only to realize we haven't actually absorbed anything.
It's so tempting to try to cram it all in at once.
Oh, yeah.
But our brains just aren't wired that way. We learn best in focused intervals with frequent breaks to actually let the information sink in.
So it's like interval training, but for your brain.
Exactly. Give your brain a break, let it breathe a little.
Instead of like trying to like, force feed yourself all this knowledge.
Exactly.
Which never works.
Never works.
It's like that saying, less is more.
Right.
Or in this case, less time studying, but more frequently, can actually lead to better results.
Precisely.
It's about quality over quantity when it comes to those study sessions.
Absolutely. And this also ties into this really important idea of spaced repetition, which I know your sources touch on.
Yeah.
By revisiting information at spaced intervals, you strengthen those neural pathways, and it just makes that knowledge stick.
Right, because it's like you're reminding your brain, hey, this is important. Don't forget this.
Yeah.
So it's like building a muscle. You wouldn't like, go to the gym once, do one massive workout, and then expect to like be ripped forever.
Right. Consistency is key.
Exactly. It's about consistency.
Yes.
So we're aiming for like shorter, more focused study sessions spaced out over time with strategic breaks in between.
You got it. That's the recipe right there.
And I'm guessing those breaks are a good time to like, maybe listen to some Baroque music.
Exactly. Or even just some calming nature sounds. Anything to just give your brain a little reset.
Oh, okay. I am loving all of this. This is all starting to come together now. We're talking about a total like brain boosting system here.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. But before we like get too carried away with all this talk of like, brain waves and Baroque music, I have to ask, there's like this line, right, between like optimizing our learning and turning into one of those like lab rats with electrodes sticking out of our head.
You're not wrong to be cautious. It's a question that comes up a lot in this field.
Right. Because it's pretty wild, all this stuff we're talking about.
It is, and it gets to like the heart of what makes this whole area of study so fascinating, the ethics of enhancing our cognitive abilities.
Right, because it's one thing to like listen to Baroque music or use spaced repetition to learn a new language.
Right.
But like, what about those technologies that could like, potentially alter our brain chemistry more directly?
Exactly. And that's where the conversation needs to kind of move beyond just the science of learning and into like the realms of ethics and philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, what are the potential risks and benefits of these like more advanced cognitive enhancements?
Right.
Who should have access to them?
Right.
And how do we make sure they're being used responsibly?
Wow. Yeah. Those are some like seriously heavy questions.
They're not easy questions to grapple with, that's for sure.
It's almost like we need a whole other deep dive just to like unpack all of that.
I know, right? Maybe we should.
Maybe we should. We'll put a pin in that one. But for our listeners who are like, maybe feeling a little less philosophical and a little more like, ready to run out and like supercharge their own learning, like what's the kind of key takeaway for them?
Yeah, that's the important thing, right? Making this practical.
Yeah. Where do we go from here?
I think the biggest thing people should take away from all of this is that this is about empowerment and possibility.
Okay. I like that.
Your brain, it's not like this static thing, set in stone.
Right.
It's dynamic, it's constantly evolving, and it's capable of so much more than we often give it credit for.
It's like we've been, like, handed the keys to a spaceship, but we never actually learned how to fly it.
That's a great analogy.
And now we're finally, like, figuring out the controls.
Exactly. And just like learning to fly a spaceship, it takes practice, it takes patience, and it takes a willingness to experiment, to see what worked for you.
So, like, what are some, like, concrete things that people can, like, start doing today to, kind of apply some of this stuff?
Totally. So maybe you start by incorporating some of the techniques we've been talking about into your own learning routine.
Okay. Maybe it's as simple as putting on some Baroque music while you're studying,
Okay.
or maybe you try experimenting with spaced repetition to, like, memorize those key concepts.
Right.
Or, hey, maybe you're feeling really adventurous and you want to
Here.
try out those binaural beats we were talking about.
Binaural beats. Here we come.
Why not? Give it a shot.
Right. What have we got to lose?
The point is, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to accelerated learning.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's about finding what works best for you, for your unique brain.
Right, like we're all starting with different, baselines and stuff. Different brains, different learning styles.
But the most important thing, honestly, is to approach it with a sense of curiosity and a belief in your own potential. Ooh, I love that. Limitless potential. I love that. Limitless potential. This deep dive has been, like, seriously mind-blowing.
Glad you're enjoying it.
And I want to thank you for, like, taking us on this incredible journey through all this knowledge.
My pleasure. It's fun to geek out on this stuff sometimes.
It's amazing what our brains are capable of.
Right, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Seriously, just scratch the surface. So, to all our listeners out there,
Yeah, go out and learn something.
keep those brains engaged, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring that incredible potential that's inside all of you. Until next time, happy learning.